Hello, I'm Tony Vlahos for ExecuNet. Thanks as always for tuning in. Most career experts would tell you to start looking for a job while you're still employed. And when you do, to tread carefully. Joining me today to share her insider view on how to job search while you're in role is ExecuNet career strategist and former executive recruiter, Sandra Botts. Sandra, it's always so good to spend time with you.
Yes, Tony, and you as well. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to it.
So it's April 2021, Sandra. Do many employed executives have change on the brain?
Well, we've seen lots of change on the brain happening, I'm going to say, ever since their world started changing around them, even for the past year. But I have noticed significantly that in spring, people do start thinking about change even more. And I probably about 75% of the people I talk to are gainfully employed, but they know that there's probably better opportunity out there for them, and they're just a little lost on how to go about doing that.
So leaving aside the external factors, for example, more relevant opportunities, how can you gauge as an executive whether it's time for you to look around while you're in role?
Well, I believe that if you're not firing on all your professional cylinders, that it's probably time for you to move on. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, because you're going to be feeling more professionally fulfilled when you are firing on all your cylinders and when you're being used for everything that you bring to the table. Now, what I found in almost 25 years of being in this business is that if you're not firing on all your professional cylinders, in other words, what they're paying for, they're really not getting. It's only a matter of time before there's a good chance they're going to figure it out too. And that's when right sizing starts to come into play. And even people who say, you know what, I just don't think it could happen to me. I know they want me here. If they're not prepared and ready to go, a lot of times the change that happens will catch them by surprise.
Sandra, what are some of the do's and don'ts of conducting a job search while you're still employed?
First of all, don't trust anybody. I've never seen a scenario where there was somebody that they work with that they knew 100%, they could tell that they were looking for work, and it wouldn't somehow come back to bite them. Now, does it mean that they're going to, um, you know, you actually have to distrust them? Does it mean that they're going to let go of your confidence? Not necessarily, but sometimes it's spite, sometimes it's jealousy, sometimes it's like they might want to take advantage of an opportunity themselves and not tell you because they think that you might try and jump in on it. There's just a lot of things that can actually go wrong if you confide in people at work to let them know that you're looking for work. So that, I would say, would be the number one do or don't. The number one do is to get really comfortable with the conversation that you have about your value. So when we're coaching people that are struggling with, say, networking, because they say I can't network because I don't want people to know I'm looking for a job. The interesting thing is that statistically, a message of I'm looking for a job, here's what I've done, and keep your eyes out for me doesn't really work anyway. The message that actually works is a message that's more centered around your value and the value you bring and the problem you solve. People actually like to celebrate that. They celebrate it, they share it, and most importantly, they have a place that they can stick you in their mind and almost put a label on it, if you will, as this is the problem this person solves. And it actually can be triggered at a later point when they hear somebody that has that solution. So when your message is not centered around what you need or looking for a job, and more centered around this is the problem I solve, you'll have the opportunity to get into conversations much earlier on in the process, sometimes before they're even an actual job. And we've found with a lot of our executives, and even in the landing interviews that I've done in the last 6 months, a lot of our members that landed in positions that weren't even actual jobs when they first started in conversation.
Mm-hmm. Now let's take that concept of letting people know your true value and expand it to our LinkedIn presence. For many of us, when we think networking, we naturally equate that with LinkedIn, because that's where we do a lot of networking. How can you leverage your LinkedIn profile effectively while you're in role to begin to conduct a job search?
There's two main ways. The first, and we'll say the first frontier, if you will, is to be optimized to be found for that value. If you're putting in things like your title into your header, it's not really going to help you much. Your title is already going to be a piece of what optimizes you to get found. And that may or may not be working with you or against you. But if your branding statement is optimized to be found, so the header that goes right underneath your name, it's a very heavily weighted item itself. It's not the end of optimization by any stretch of the imagination, but the words that are actually in that header have so much weight on how the search results come back. And remember, being found, you only are found based on the terms that people are using when they're searching for you. So maybe it's your network. Maybe it's just your site. Don't we know somebody who's really more of a turnaround expert and they're searching in their LinkedIn? Those sorts of things are going to bring you up higher in the search. Don't be lured in by casting a wide net. If you're at the executive level, if you make anywhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 or more, it doesn't do you any good to cast a wide net. As they say, casting a wide net, you just bring up a bunch of junk. Your strategy should be focused on in fishing the right waters with the right bait, so that when you search engine optimize on LinkedIn or LinkedIn optimize and you come up in searches, you will then come up higher in the searches that you're right for, and maybe less searches. That's okay, because coming up in 100 more searches isn't going to help you if you're on page 100, because no one's going to see you anyway. The second way that you optimize yourself on LinkedIn when you're a confidential job seeker is to work on branding yourself with your network. So I always joke around with people that, I have over 6,000 connections on LinkedIn. And I don't know what everybody does. I couldn't tell you them by heart right now. But if I were to go on LinkedIn right now and look at my LinkedIn feed, the people that show up on my feed, I'm pretty familiar with. I see them a lot. I see them every day. I see them the same as if I was going into an office and walking down the hall and saying, "Hi, Tony." I see that person. I see the work that they're doing. And so because that person is front and center in my mind, that person has a huge opportunity to brand with me. Mm-hmm. And to get me familiar with what I do, to the point where a lot of the people that show up on my home stream, I could actually think about or recall in my mind if I'm standing in line at the grocery store and talking to somebody. And that sort of branding and coming up with knowing what your value is and knowing how to show up in the home stream is sort of the step 2 of optimization.
Mhm. So you've got your presence, you're looking at your feed, you are leveraging your ties, both strong and weak, to advance your cause. For many people in search, whether they're in role or out of role, getting in front of decision makers remains a very challenging thing. It feels it's totally out of our control. How do you make it part of what you control? For example, is there a specific technique or tip you can offer our viewers of how to leverage the ties they have to get in front of the decision makers?
Let's first start with defining the decision makers. One of the things that makes this job search very different than any job search you will do, let's just say in a lower compensated role or lower in the pyramid, is that it's most likely not going to be some sort of a hierarchy hire. Okay. It's not going to be somebody who does what you do and can just get what you do. It's most likely going to be a consensus decision. And that consensus decision is made by multiple people. And the multiple people that are making this decision might have different views on what they deem to be the right fit for the job. So I like the fact that you phrased it in what you can control and what you can't control, because we all know that we can't control what people's preconceived notions are about us. But what we can control is a lot about what those perceptions are once they do see us. So if they have let me give an example. If they have a preconceived notion that, let's say, somebody from GE would just not work at our company because, we're a smaller company, we're more mobile, we're more agile. And then they see somebody's resume, let's just say, and their most recent company, or they spent many years at GE. We can't control that they have this preconceived notion about people from GE, but what we can do is we can take the opportunity to control the narrative in a different light. So if we put front and center the benefit that we bring to the table or the specific problem that we solve, we get the opportunity for somebody to create that narrative about us, for that's the thing that they do. We can't make jobs appear. So the only way we can really get in front of decision makers or get in front of people in the right time, in the right place, is to always have that value conversation optimized, because you never know where it's going to come up. If you decide that, oh, I'm going to just wait till I'm ready to go job searching and I really need this job, and then I'm going to form my elevator pitch and I'm going to go out there and start networking, the odds of that working are pretty slim. What we do know is that when these opportunities come up, a lot of times we didn't even manufacture it. We didn't engineer it. Two people in my career that I've worked with have landed jobs from people that they talked to when they were in line standing at Starbucks.
Always be ready.
Always be ready.
Yeah. So last question, Sandra. One more thing would you like our viewers to know about their search in 2021, particularly if they are enrolled?
The number one thing, it's funny, sometimes, Tony, I think we're sharing a brain, is to always be ready. It is to know that you cannot necessarily manufacture opportunities come up. And sometimes they just come up. And a lot of where people miss the boat is that they weren't prepared when that opportunity showed up. Perfect example is let's say you do get attention from a headhunter on LinkedIn, and that headhunter calls you about an opportunity. Well, you didn't plan on that. Well, you did get yourself optimized, so good for you. But this is the ideal job, and the headhunter says, great, I would love to submit you to my client. Well, if you don't have that resume ready within the next 24 hours, I can pretty much tell you they're already moving on to somebody else, or they're pushing forward to decision, because at the stage headhunters get involved. If you're so excited that you finally get to go to a restaurant for the first time in a year, and you head out to a restaurant and you randomly see somebody that you haven't seen in ages, and you start talking, and that person is actually working at one of the companies that you've been wanting to work at. If you're not ready with that value conversation, that I'm looking for a job, hey, can you get me in, isn't really going to cut the mustard. So always being ready with your conversation, knowing what your value is, and just to leave it with the final thing that really, that is the crux of how our brains work, is that if you don't know your unique value proposition, the odds of you seeing it when it shows up right in front of you are pretty slim.
Sandra, always a joy to spend time with you, learn from you, and thanks for making time today.
Anytime, Tony.
Bye for now.